In 1967, Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, was given a pamphlet that would unknowingly help him change the face of pop culture media as well as how it interacts with its audience that is still felt to this day. The pamphlet in question was Spockinalia. While not the first Star Trek fanzine, it was certainly the first that took off in a huge way, because later, in 1968, Roddenberry himself came out and stated that if you were a fan of Star Trek, it was almost required reading. In his mind, it was required reading. And also, it became an unofficial official product Bible for anyone who was not him who happened to be writing anything for Star Trek. It did such gangbusters after the fact that he stated that it then had 5 different volumes, and each volume had multiple print editions. And the individuals who compiled it initially, while they did not write or draw everything in the book, but the ones who initially compiled those volumes, then later went on to work on various official printed Star Trek media. And that was the first time that we saw a creator who made something that had a huge audience positively interact with that audience and what the audience was creating to whatever they were making. And that sparked so much amazing creativity within the Star Trek fandom. And then later in 1974, much renowned and much talked about, the Spock and Kirk fanfiction zine and fanfiction scene in general took off like a freaking rocket. Again, it wasn't the first time that people have been writing fanfic for Spock and Kirk, but because of Roddenberry's initial interaction with Spockinalia, he was more willing to, while not openly do the queer thing of having them actually be together, he was more willing to interact with it and point out the fact that he was interacting with it, which then gave fans even more gumption to just have their own opinions and headcanons and touch upon the world that they all loved. And to this day, that's still something that's affecting everything. But hey, why am I bringing this up? I'm wearing Magic the Gathering information. My name is Stalwart Ursa, and welcome to my channel, where I talk geek, fan things, and honestly, whatever comes in my little nerdy mind. Currently, I'm a big Magic the Gathering fan. I have been into Magic for the last 4, almost 5 years now, and recently quasi-recently, I was a grant winner for the New Perspective grant for MagicCon Philadelphia. And as someone who has a huge lineage, I guess, technically, of being a geek in various forms, 90% of my life has been in some way, shape, or form touching fandom history and being in geek spaces. I was going to conventions in utero. And that's something that I am very privileged to have. Not a lot of people have the background that I did that would allow me to have knowledge like Gene Roddenberry's history with Star Trek fan fiction and fanzines to just prattle off the top of my head. But why am I bringing that up now? Well, in regards to Magic the Gathering, this is something that we are starting to see now. So, I got the idea to make this video about, I want to say like a month and a couple of weeks ago, because my wife, who is a delightful individual, writes fan fiction, has always written fan fiction as long as I have known them, and I have loved everything that they have written, from Transformers fan fiction to Mass Effect fan fiction, and now to Magic the Gathering fan fiction. And it's been very interesting to watch them interact with people that they know. Because while I have been taking off in my own way, doing lore-inspired TikToks and doing some spell tables here and there, I've mostly been focused on like the official Vorthos side of it. But it was fascinating catching up with my wife and talking to them as they were talking about something that came up on their Magic the Gathering Discord. That unknowingly, a Vorthos Reddit had begun grabbing fan fiction, and they had a thread that was actually recommending fanfic because of the stuff that was happening in the current canon with the March of the Machines storyline. And it was interesting because you could see a huge swath of what people were engaging and interacting with. And there was, of course, the multiple camps. There was the camp of people who had been in Magic for so long that they were like, this is ridiculous. We have the books for this. We have the stories for this. Fanfic doesn't add anything to the pot. And then you had people who were looking at it who had never engaged with fanfic either at all or who had never engaged with Magic fanfic and were like, wow, this is very well done. One thing in particular was the Ayara Furnace Queen and Urabrask fanfics. There's a few of them. At that point, there had only been 3, one of which was actually written by my wife. If you go to AO3, you can totally read it. It is great. It is lovely. It's very smutty. If you are under 18, please do not read it. But it is in there, and it's great, and people were commenting about that and excited about it because Ayara, the Furnace Queen, was something that was given to us and never done anything with. The Eldraine side story for March of the Machines did include Ayara, but in a very weird way that kind of made her completion not about her and her choices or anything, but made it about Rankle for some reason, who also wasn't strong enough to be like, wow, she's still hot. Because let me tell you, Ayara, what a woman. My wife and a few other individuals saw fit to fix that in their own ways, to make their own elaboration of what the story in the card art gave us, because the story that we were given didn't expand upon that and left some stuff on the floor for imaginations. And, you know, you again have people who are like, we don't need this. This is ridiculous. And you have other people who are like, wow, that's really cool. I never thought of engaging with that way. That's very fun. Or kind of like dissecting the people's thought process in fanfic. And then that got me thinking about, again, continuing to talk to my wife, because while she's getting a lot of hits on that fic that she wrote, she's not getting a lot of comments and she's not getting a lot of like kudos or anything. And that typically can be an indicator that there are a lot of people that are intaking it, because you can actually see the numbers of people engaging with your story. But Magic the Gathering has not had a culture that has dealt with fan created things like this. Quick tidbit, like a fanfic. If you liked it, if you read a fanfic from the starting author's notes to the ending author's notes, give them a kudos, give them a like. You can leave a comment, that helps a lot, but just give them a like. These people have just been pouring their heart and soul into things, and it's getting other people invested in what they are interested in. So like for Magic the Gathering, we are going to have a ton more people who start looking into the story and the game because they happen to find someone's original Planeswalker fic. So, if you see fanfic, like it, engage with it. That's how you help the fanfic authors, because they are doing a great amount of work that is truly just a passion project. And I know a lot of Magic people aren't used to engaging with that stuff. It's okay. Of course, there's always been like proxies and proxy artists. I think that's about as close as Magic has gotten to like having a fan created item that it is part of the culture of Magic the Gathering. But in terms of like fan fiction, that's not really been something that Magic is used to. Similarly, when I was at MagicCon Philly, I ended up meeting some delightful people who I also have met through TikTok and making content on TikTok, that were so pleasantly surprised by how great the cosplay was at MagicCon Philly, and that they were then surprised that there wasn't a cosplay hospital, that there wasn't a room or someone wandering around with stuff to help cosplayers fix their cosplay. And I had to gently point out that the reason that is because while anime conventions and then now comic conventions have been doing that, comic conventions have been doing that for the last 10-ish, 12-ish years, and anime conventions have been doing that for decades, is because those fan cultures inherently created that. They cultivated that. But now Magic the Gathering is getting to that point to where we're starting to get more engagement with Magic beyond just I have to be a spike player, I have to be the best player ever, I have to get to pro level play. And that's throwing a lot of people who have been in Magic content for a loop. To the point to where now people are seeing that it's getting difficult to create content for Magic. And I agree to an extent, but it really depends on how you engage with it. Because so many people have the thought process that because this is a tabletop game, that is all there is to bring to the table. So Magic content has to be playing. Magic content has to be finance things. Magic content has to be yet another how to optimize X. And that's fine. There is certainly room for all of those things. But that is not all there is to Magic. It hasn't been for a long time. But it has certainly stopped a lot of the fandom culture growth. So that's kind of what I want to go into in this video is there's a wonderful 30 years of Magic the Gathering. That is a huge milestone for any form of media. Game, animation, film, music, art, anything. But Magic was stagnant in regards to interacting with fans and what fans thought that they could do and what fans thought that they could bring to the table. It's interesting to see that things like fan fiction and fan art and cosplay hospitals and even convention like etiquette and convention culture has been so oddly stagnated. And I think from being someone who, again, has gone to conventions in utero, and then also I have a history of helping run both security and conventions in general for about 12 years now, it is interesting as hell for me to see this because I think it truly is that we are slowly starting to shed the mentality that being into Magic the Gathering only means playing to get to a high level of play, which isn't a bad thing, mind you. To play to get to pro level is admirable. To play to be able to have high level play is a skill. Like, do not take that as like I'm writing it off. It is certainly a skill. There's a lot of math that you have to do. There's a lot of statistics that you have to do. There's a lot of strategy into becoming a high level Magic Gathering player. The culture of GPs and how you are expected to go and simply just sit and play and or buy cards, I think has kind of stagnated the growth of the fandom as a whole. However, now we are getting to the point to where individuals are thinking beyond the decks and thinking beyond how can I build this even better. Because there are so many ways to interact with something. But Magic the Gathering, despite how long-lived it has been, has not engaged with fans and fan-created content in a way as it is currently doing, in a way that is currently slowly starting to take off. There is no culture for it. There is no etiquette for it. A lot of people don't understand how to interact with fan artists or fanfics or cosplay in any way, positive or negative. And I think that that is something that is throwing people for a loop, certainly, and is also very fascinating in terms of someone who, again, has been around for conventions and various fandoms for a majority of my life. An instance of this that I thought, and kind of warms like the cold dead cackles of my heart, was, again, at MagicCon Philadelphia and sitting in the audience and watching the cosplay contest. The cosplay contest itself, one, was amazing. There were so many people who were making such great swings because they loved these characters that it was so amazing to see all of the artistry on what was happening. There were people who you could tell it was their first cosplay, and then you can tell that there were other people who they had thought about it and they were creative and they wanted to do it and they took the swing. And then there were people who you could see who have been cosplaying for a bit and this was perhaps their first time doing a Magic character. All of those people were in that cosplay contest. But the thing that really got me as somebody who likes to be very aware of my surroundings, the people sitting around myself and my wife and my friends were so sweet and so like it was so sweet and enlightening to how magic has been developing as of late. So anytime anyone came on stage, one, everyone lost their minds, which was great. But I actually was sitting, it was very interesting where I was sitting. I had some, you can tell, older magic players, or some older gentlemen who were graying and balding, and then you had like a family with some kids, and then you had people around my age who were like mid 30s, and then like there was a couple of teenagers, and then there was just anyone in between. It was very interesting. But anytime anyone came on stage, regardless of what their craft level was, the older people next to us just kept constantly, just, they were in awe the entire time anyone came up. They were just truly enraptured with anyone who came on stage. It was so sweet because I kept hearing them talk about how, I think one of the cosplayers was the Lavamancer, and it was a very chill costume. It was a robe and a hat and like a little like dragon plushie. Very chill, very comfortable costume, right? But these guys were so enamored with it because they were like, oh my gosh, he got the colors right. He looks just like it. I remember when I pulled that card. Wow, that's so fantastic. And that was so sweet to hear. You can tell that these guys have been into magic for so long. They never thought that they would see one of their favorite characters actually get some love. And that's kind of what doing fan things is about. It is about taking this one little character, pushing everything else aside, and then stating, this one I love. And that's something that Magic could have in droves. There is, of course, the Planeswalkers, all of whom I love. This spot right here is for Vraska. If there was a Vraska Funko Pop, WotC, please get at that. You have Planeswalkers, of course, because WotC needed to make characters to be able to be like main characters of stories, which was a smart move. But you also just have other legendary creatures and creatures in general and planes and so many things that are certainly given to fans, but people never thought that people would engage with them in a way beyond just playing the cards. And now that people are, we are changing the mindset of you have to be a pro player and you have to play real good, to now it's you have more people who are like, here's a fun theme deck. Here's really cool cards that I made. Here's like a rethought process of something. Here's fanfic. Here's fan art of my favorite characters. Because historically speaking, of course, in fandom culture, a lot of these fan created things are typically, not always, but typically, feminine identifying individuals and women. And of course, there's also a lot of men that have done it too. And so the thought process of shifting from Magic the Gathering has to be pro level play, and you have to look like a certain type of person, white, cis, usually around 19 and 30 years old, to play Magic. Also, you have to be male. That's another very important thing. To play Magic and do anything with Magic. That is now shifting to people can be more casual with it. People can just interact with whatever they want to interact with. People of color can be invested and become involved. Queer individuals are getting more involved because of queer characters actually getting storylines and not being closeted anymore. It's a win. It's a win. But that's something that, because we are now investing in having different types of characters, different skin tones, different storylines, different sexualities, different genders, different abilities, physical and non, you're starting to get people who are looking at that and saying, wow, that's like me. That's like X. That's like this person that I love. That's like this really cool trope that I love. Oh, and the art looks really cool too. And I could buy this card and just play with it. Wow, that's really fun. I want to do something with that. And that's great. That is something that we need to foster as a community, even more so because now, from people like myself and my wife and other people that I know who have fostered a positive environment for people who casually want to get into magic, this is the seedlings of that. We are starting to see more interaction with people creating things out of love for this game. To be clear, me talking about how like the fandom culture being stagnant and how everyone's being surprised by fan art and fanfic authors and like cosplayers in a positive way does not detract from the fact that there probably and were already people who were doing those things before now it is becoming a little more popular and a little more easy to see individuals doing that. Because there have been people, there's pictures everywhere, you can look them up. There are people who were cosplaying at GPs. There just wasn't a lot of it because a lot of people, didn't think that that was how you can engage with magic. And honestly, people had a lot of very not great engagement moments with individuals at different things because they were being a little fun and a little casual and cosplaying. But people have been doing that. There are fics that go back for a bit now. I haven't looked at the furthest one back. I will put a clip here, a little image of what the furthest one back is. Wow. And even that, it's that's even just from AO3. Fanfiction.net, unfortunately now as moth-eaten as it's been, was also a source for a lot of that. And I'm sure that's where a lot of people went to do fanfic. And then there was also live journals. And fan artists in general have been making stuff because they saw the art on cards. So do not take me talking about this stuff just taking off now as, oh, people have never been doing it. No, that's not the case. People have absolutely been engaging with magic in this way. And that's how we continue forward. That is how the game keeps getting fresh blood and new eyes and new magic, is letting people make things for themselves and seeing and themselves in the game and putting themselves in the story and making original characters. So many people, I am sure, have been making OCs for Magic for decades, but haven't said anything about it because people would think that they were weird. And that's not weird. I'm here to tell you that is not weird. You can make your own original Planeswalker and make stories about them dealing with the cracking and the fracturing of the multiverse because of the Phyrexian invasion. You should, by the way. There are also original Planeswalker stories on AO3. Having this fan involvement with Magic is only going to make Magic stronger. While we are getting a lot inundated with Magic product, the culture of the fandom will continue getting stronger by having and allowing people to create things that they love. Like, I created my little Scrove puppet here. I think there's so many things that I'm looking at that. I'm like, there's so many things wrong with that thing. It was like my first go at it, and I'm currently working on another go at him to make him better. But so many people loved Skrelv. They loved seeing Skrelv. And Skrelv, I love you, buddy, is a know-nothing character. Skrelv is never going to be doing anything big in the story. But I saw this little mite who they said was a king and bucked against the Phyrexian standards and would bite people who tried to force Phyrexian ideology upon other individuals or mites around it. And so mites just accumulated to Skrelv, and then Skrelv became a king. That's such a fun story, and that's never going to get expanded upon. He's a know-nothing character. He's a mite. He's cool. Whatever. But I loved that little dork so much that I made that. And people have glommed onto him because they saw such really cool story building in that. Or they saw a spark of potential. A spark helps planeswalkers travel the multiverse, and a spark of potential helps fans create something for these delightful characters. so that their stories can continue even when their usefulness in the main game no longer exists. And that, I feel, is how we continue for another 30 years. Because pro play is amazing and such a good thing to aspire to if that's how you tend to play. If that's how you get enjoyment, by all means, make your money, do your thing, play those cards. But having that spark of creativity to show the love that you get for these characters, I think that's real magic. So hey, yep, I am on YouTube. I am finally doing stuff with this channel. That is my bad. I apologize. I did a box opening and then I didn't do anything again. That's my bad. Editing is hard. Life is hard. I got into TikTok and yeah, I want to do stuff like this with sparks of inspiration and fan culture and history for magic and whatever else crosses my fancy because I'm a Geekmosa of many colors, and I have a lot of things to say, and I have a lot of hard earned knowledge. So, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like, share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing more like this, as well as like get ready for convention stuff and the whole shebang. We're figuring it out. We're figuring it out as we go. But the Geekmosa way is getting invested in something and learning about it to your heart's content. If you like this, comment down below. Let me know if you want a primer on how to engage with fan things because it's a whole new world for Magic. And you know what? I am very happy that Magic is getting there. It took 30 years, but we did it.